Just a note to everyone, this event is being recorded and will eventually be put on YouTube. So everyone other than the speaker may keep their microphones and cameras switched off. Having said that, I think floor is all yours, Mr. Sridhar.
Good morning in America and good evening in India. I take this opportunity to thank the hosts for giving me this opportunity to place my book before this august audience. This book, Maxims from Mahabharata, is actually a compilation of different slokas from the Mahabharata, which actually present the essence or a glimpse into the essence of why the itihasas like Ramayana and Mahabharata have outlived many other civilizations, as well as outlived the time and space that we all are seeing, in which multiple civilizations across the globe have actually gone into extinction. This is proven by the fact that our itihasas actually show us the way of life, and it deals with various intricate issues which actually affect us in our day-to-day life. So in that sense, this becomes a very important part of our civilizational existence, and our itihasas have accompanied us for generations, for thousands of years, and they even now provide us guidance and solutions to the contemporary and modern day challenges that we all face in our day-to-day lives. I'm trying to do a screen share. I hope it is visible for all. Host, if you could just confirm so that I can proceed with my slideshow.
Yeah.
Yes, I can see.
Yes. So the book actually seeks to compile multiple topics, and I've tried to classify all these maxims under broadly 12 topics of interest. To just give an overview, the topical heads would be dharma, as we all understand that the Indian civilization is rooted in the concept of dharma. Then truth, satyam. Satyam and dharma, I believe, are the two guiding lights for our civilization from times immemorial. Then there's a chapter which provides us an insight as to what will be the principles for governing punishment, be it in our interpersonal relationships or probably from a state's perspective. Then we have a chapter by name karma. We are all familiar with the karma philosophy. So I've tried to compile certain maxims which would indicate as to the essence of or the application of karma. Then hygiene is a very essential part of the Indian Sanatana Dharma way of life. Therefore, we give great importance to Suchi and Subrata, as we would normally refer to them in our Indian languages. Then there's a chapter called nature, which highlights the importance of the inter-species coexistence, which the humans have recognized even in the Mahabharata times. Faith is something which we are all familiar with. And of course, Bhagavad Gita gives us the essence of faith in different stanzas there. Then there is a chapter on anger. So the implications of anger and the consequences of anger are actually spelled out in various chapters. And this is one such chapter that we come across. I've compiled a few maxims on anger. Then there's something called reputation. We are all concerned with our reputation, both online and offline. So this was a very important aspect which has been dealt with even in Mahabharata, an individual's reputation. Then we have certain eternal values. So these values, apart from all the other things that I have referred to so far, are also of generic nature, and we would find them probably in all cultures and all civilizations. So this transcends our civilization to and times that they were made for all times and all cultures and civilizations would actually approve and endorse of these. Then we have something very interesting. Mental health was a very serious issue even in Mahabharata time. In fact, even in Ramayana times, mental health has been a very serious issue which has been dealt with even in Ramayana. Then the power of words. We are all familiar how strong impact that certain words can leave, be it in the social media or interpersonal communications. So with this background, I would like to start with the first maxim, which speaks about dharma. Now, when we talk about dharma, what exactly is dharma is something very difficult to grasp and define. Dharma is a very unique expression which comes from our culture and our civilization, which encompasses several things. And to identify or understand what it is where Bhishma in the Anushasana Parva, I mean, for those who are familiar with the Mahabharata, it would not be difficult to place Anushasana Parva comes after the Shanti Parva when Bhishma Pitamaha is on the bed of arrows. So for the uninitiated, Mahabharata is the story of cousins, the Pandavas and Kauravas, who have a common lineage from the Kuru dynasty. The Pandavas are 5 in number and the Kauravas are 100 in number. Kaurava's father, Dhritarashtra, is the blind man who was heading the kingdom, and Pandavas start their own journey and then build their own kingdom in Indraprastha. So once they build their kingdom, the Dhritarashtra's sons become jealous of them and then invite them for a game of dice. In the game of dice, they con the Pandavas and send them for exile. And once they come back after the exile and after complying with the terms of their bet, they refuse to hand over the kingdom. And that leads to the epic Kurukshetra battle. In the Kurukshetra battle, which happens on a spread of 18 days, Bhishma Pitamaha leads the army of the Kauravas, fighting on behalf of Dhritarashtra's sons for 10 days. And then he's injured by Arjuna by keeping Shikandin in front of him. And then he is put on a bed of arrows. When he refuses to fight the Shikandin, Arjuna ensures that he no longer is fit for fight. While being on the bed of arrows, after the war is concluded, Yudhishthira comes to Bhishma and then takes lessons on administration, philosophy, jurisprudence, and all aspects that we normally get to see in the modern universities faculties. And Shanti and Anushasana Parva are the essence of the Mahabharata as I would see it. Here, Bhishma Pitamaha, while being on the bed of arrows, he speaks of dharma, that dharma is one and indivisible. Dharma is perceived to be threefold, as seen from the perspectives of scriptures, that is the Vedas, direct perception, that is what one perceives for himself or herself, and the customary usages. So customary usages were always a referral point when one person or a society is not in a position to take any step as to what is the right step or the wrong step or which one is in accordance with dharma or not. So there were 3 different measures to identify what dharma is. So Vedas are considered paramount to understand what dharma is. Thereafter, perception. So therefore, when Vedas are not intelligible for the common man, the perception as to what is dharma is a unique conscious driven effort. Then we have the customary usages. So the practices in a particular clan or in a geographical area is also a measure to understand what is in conformity with dharma and what is not. The parts of these 3 that constitute the foundation of dharma are distinctly laid down. So dharma is to be identified from these 3 sources, and dharma is one, though it can be approached or understood from 3 distinct forms, is what Bhishma says through this mind. Then what comprise of dharma is the next issue that he seeks to address in the Anushasana Parva. Non-violence, truth, absence of anger, and charity. For these 4 qualities constitute eternal dharma. This is a very interesting perspective. Now, how does one measure dharma? Being non-violent, being truthful, absence of anger, and charity. But these four qualities constitute eternal dharma. When we talk about non-violence, it's very simple to understand. Non-violence could be verbal, physical, or by thought. Similarly, truth. Most often than not, truth is a very evasive concept for one to understand. And I will deal with it in a few maxims under the chapter truth. Anger, of course, is a separate category again. Charity is all we know, that something which helps people as performing his dharma by giving in to people who are in need. Now, when this is from the chapter truth, auspicious or inauspicious, liked or disliked, one should speak the truth to him whose defeat one does not wish, even though not solicited. Now, this interdict is given by Vidura. This is part of Vidura Niti, which comes in Udyoga Parva. Now, in the context of the Mahabharata story, Udyoga Parva is when Pandavas have concluded their Vanavasa and they all assemble in the Virata king's assembly. All their friends start visiting them. That was the time when Dhritarashtra becomes a little insecure for his own children. That now that they've been enjoying Pandava's kingdom as well for all these 13 years, it's time to return it. And they, being covetous, would not like to return it. At that stage, he sends Sanjaya, his trusted emissary, to go and find out Yudhishthira's mind and come back without giving him an assurance that he's going to be returned his kingdom. So he just sends Sanjaya to find out that and give a message that they don't come or Pandavas don't take any hasty steps. So Sanjaya comes back and then he visits the king in his personal chambers and says that what he's doing is not proper, and then he refuses to disclose the message Yudhishthira sent to him. And he says that I'll disclose this in the assembly tomorrow morning because I've gone as an emissary of the state. I will not disclose it in private in your chambers. So when Sanjaya retreats, Vidura is summoned by Dhritarashtra. As Dhritarashtra and Vidura are having a common paternity through Vedavyasa, their biological father, he calls him. He's also a counselor and also a cousin, to give him some solace because he's restless. Then Vidura, when he opens the Viduraniti chapter, he spells out that auspicious or inauspicious, liked or disliked, one should speak the truth to him whose defeat one does not wish, even though not solicited. Then the issue as to what is truth. Now, to define truth, I think even modern jurists in the best of universities would struggle. And we find a beautiful definition as to the 13 aspects which go into truth. This is the Shanti Parva again, where Bhishma is trying to define the contours of truth or how to identify truth. The forms that truth assumes are impartiality, self-control, forgiveness, modesty, endurance, goodness, renunciation, contemplation, dignity, fortitude, compassion, and abstention from injury. These, O great monarch, are the 13 forms of truth. Truth is immutable, eternal, and unchangeable. So this is the great quality of truth that we all would have witnessed or seen. Though whatever be the propaganda or whatever be the campaigns run, for a momentary period of time, truth would not be revealed to all or for some. But as a matter of fact, all of us would have experienced that there's a very uncanny way for the truth to emerge in any aspect of life that we would have observed. So that's the great quality of truth that Bhishma is talking about. Then Bhishma again in Shanti Parva is talking about dharma and truth. Wherever dharma prevails, truth is there. Everything flourishes with truth. Now here he is talking about truth being a coexisting aspect of dharma. So you cannot have dharma and truth separated. So they invariably are integral and they stay together. So therefore they are dependent on each other's existence in that sense of the phrase. Then about talking about strength. This is what we normally are aware of, the moral strength. Truth is the greatest strength. So a person who's speaking truth would have nothing to fear, either in this world or in the world after, under any culture or any civilization. So that's the strength of truth. Then in Shanti Parva, Arjuna is saying this. The wise have recognized punishment as a device to govern the unruly and punish the deviants. Now, who are these deviants that we are talking about? He's talking about the people who would actually violate, or people who would actually not meet the standards expected of them. A very interesting context in which the whole thing happens. Here, Draupadi initiates this conversation, which leads eventually to this particular sloka. Here, the conversation is in the context of the justification of war or the non-justification of the war, which led to the decimation of the entire Kuru race. The grandchildren, children of Pandavas are killed, the Kauravas are killed. So it is at that stage of despondency that Yudhishthira is going through a serious state of mental health, or a depression, as we would modernly call it. It is in this context that they are trying to assuage Yudhishthira and say that you have done what is required to be done as a Kshatriya. That is by delivering punishment to the Kauravas who were deviant. So look at the context also in which the wise have recognized punishment as a device to govern the unruly and punish the deviants. As the story unravels, Pandavas, having won the entire kingdoms after performing the Rajasuya, they give up by abiding by the conditions of their wager and go to the forest. When they come back after completing their term, they were legitimately entitled to return back to their kingdom, which is denied. It is at that stage Sri Krishna also starts an embassy to get some kind of a mediation between the parties, which is also not successful. That leads to the war and decimation. And as a Yudhishthira, the king leading the Pandava army, was duty bound to enforce dharma, and punishment was a mode of enforcing dharma. And that is what they are trying to persuade him and then assuage his sad state of affairs by saying that you did what you were required to do, because punishment is a recognized mode. And then after punishing him, that you are going through these pangs of pain and suffering, is where they come out with this mind. There's another thing on punishment. One who commits an offense due to ignorance or foolishness deserves to be forgiven, for learning and wisdom are not always easily attainable. This we come across more often than in our workspaces, whether it's a new intern or a new recruit who joins. And without understanding, they might do some things which actually harm or probably cause loss or actually delay the process. So it is here that this maxim is very contemporarily useful and relevant. One who commits an offense due to ignorance or foolishness. There are foolish people, not everyone is as smart. Deserves to be forgiven, for learning and wisdom are not always easily attainable by man. And this is in a conversation between King Prahlada. I mean, the conversations are amazing in the Vanaparva. Here, Pandavas are in the forest to complete the 12 years of exile. When they move out of the kingdom and they are there, they have enough time to debate and then question each other's decisions. So Draupadi, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadeva on one side start this diatribe against Yudhishthira, that we see that what kind of decisions are you taking? Why are you actually not taking to arms with Bhima and Arjuna? We can defeat the Kauravas and claim our kingdom back. It is in that context that Draupadi is citing King Prahlada, who has endorsed or approved that rules of punishment are to be enforced. But while stating what are the rules of punishment and how they have to be enforced, Prahlada is analyzing that in one instance where a person commits an offense due to ignorance or foolishness, he needs to be condoned. And then she develops this debate to say that Kauravas are not either ignorant nor foolish, and therefore they deserve to be punished. Power to punish controls people and in turn protects them. Power to punish is awake when everyone else is asleep, hence is also equated with dharma. Now, Shanti Parva, again, Arjuna is quoting. I've compiled these slokas from different contexts, but they actually give a similar message, though they come in different contexts and in different parvas of the Mahabharata. To find the consistency of their principles as far as punishment or any other aspect is concerned. The consistency or 1 lakh verses is the amazing thing that we come across when they are debating on dharma or nyaya or satya. The power to punish controls people. So here it is more a jurisprudential question as to what is the purpose of punishment. Like in all modern societies, we have the law enforcement, we have the courts administrating justice, and we have parents also actually administering discipline at homes. So the extent of the disciplining probably varies from US and India, but the intervention of 911 and other things are more profound there. But the power to punish is what is very critical, which controls the people and protects them. In the absence of that power, I mean, vandalism, we see what happens when there is a riot in the street. Everyone is at a risk of their life, limb, and property. So that's the importance and significance of recognizing and reposing this power of punishment in the state. And this is a very interesting sloka. I mean, there is no act which is entirely pure, nor any that is entirely simple. In every act, right or wrong, something of both prevails. I mean, I could just think of the contemporary example of lockdowns. Different nations dealt with it differently. The consequences were evident. Those who went in for lockdowns had consequences. Those who did not go in for lockdown also had consequences. So therefore, any decision that we make, either in a personal space, professional space, socially, or as a nations, there will be certain elements of good and certain elements of bad, which are inherent in that. So it is in this context that this recognition is there, and therefore a decision needs to be guided by dharma or satya, or both together, is what the essence of the conversation in which this sloka emerges. A person who does not engage in karma is never content in this world, nor can destiny alter the course of a man who has strayed. As the pupil follows one's preceptor, so does destiny follow exertion. The affairs in which one's own exertion is seen, their destiny shows its hand. This is again cited from Lord Brahma. So, I mean, Mahabharata and Ramayana are itihasas, are very anecdotal. So, on any principle, they go back to an authority and then they cite an instance from the past. If you recall, I had mentioned the 3 sources of dharma are the Vedic scriptures, the perception of the individual at that moment when he doesn't have access to the scriptures or is not equipped with them, and then customs and usage. So the usages are what are cited in this context as to what has been done. And in Anushasana Parva, Bhishma Pitama actually keeps referring to various instances and narrations and anecdotes to put across his point. A person who does not engage in karma is never content in this world, nor can destiny alter the course of a man who has strayed. As the pupil follow one's preceptor, so does destiny follow exertion. The affairs in which one's own exertion is seen, their destiny shows its hand. It actually is trying to say that we cannot be fatalistic, that our karma would decide our future. That's not the way that the Sanatana Dharma or our karma philosophy operates. Our philosophy is that a person is in a position to actually alter his destiny by his own exertion in the present life. Therefore, for us, a human life is a greatest gift, because the things that one can achieve in human life is not possible in any other form of life. For us, all forms of life are similar and equal, and no one is inferior, and we are not the master of the universe. That is not our cultural understanding of our existence on this planet or in the cosmos. We are one amongst the several species that we occupy this planet, and then we coexist with them. Here, they are talking about how does one actually recognize or achieve their karma, and how does one alter the destiny. So in this context, they are highlighting the importance of the present work that we do, or the moment which is in our control to make a call, to go one way or the other. I mean, that is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. The entire narration of Bhagavad Gita ends or concludes with Krishna giving the ultimate choice to Arjuna to decide what he wants to do. So that is the epitome of this decision making discretion recognized in the individual to choose his future. And his conduct in the moment is what is going to define his future. That's what is actually the essence of this maxim. As men from a lump of clay, whatever they wish to make, even so do men attain varied results determined by their own karma. So we actually, by performing our karma, are actually defining our own future. That's what is captured here. Kala, that is time in Anushasana Parva. Again, there are several characters which are introduced in these anecdotes. Here it is in the context of a time. The Kal, as we refer to, has itself come for a conversation and then with a particular set of people, and then dwells into this issue. I've given the context for each verse. Because of paucity of time, I'm not able to go into each of those contexts at length. The good or the righteous never answer the calls of nature on the public road, in cowpens or paddy fields. So this is pure hygiene. I mean, especially when we're talking about public health, we're talking about hygiene in public spaces and stopping open defecation. In fact, this present government and the Prime Minister have initiated the Swachh Bharat campaign, and he spoke about it from a public platform in US. So the importance given to public hygiene has always been there in our itihasas, which recognized it as a matter of very great significance, which would actually recognize the qualities of a human being. So it's actually defining the quality of a good person who would not do these things. So by implicitly, the people who do these are not the good conduct. So by various measures, so they may be found to be in deviant of their dharma of ensuring there's public hygiene in the places around them. The threefold fruits of dharma, wealth, and pleasures, dharma, artha, kama, can be milked from the earth, like from a wish-giving cow, if the resources are used prudently. So it so beautifully encompasses that dharma, artha, kama can be fulfilled without actually abusing the Mother Earth. So we have this concept of reverence towards Mother Earth as Bhudevi, and also recognizing nature as a Prakriti. We have that culture of acknowledging them as a givers and therefore worship them in various forms. So this epitomizes that recognition as a wish-giving cow. That is the Kamadhenu that we would normally recognize as the wish-giving cow. If the earth is properly treated, it becomes father, mother, child, and heaven for all creatures. So, I mean, again, when you actually take care of your surroundings, the environment is what they're actually referring to. I mean, just look at the depth of their understanding of the inter species consequences on the planet Earth itself. So, if you actually take care of them, like it becomes father, mother, and child for all, and heaven for all creatures. And otherwise, obviously, it's the contrast. So it's most of the things are said in a very positive tone, in a positive, affirmative tone to encourage good conduct and less of fear of the consequences. So when we read our Ramayana and Mahabharata, most of the dharmas that they are spelled out through the protagonists are in the positive tone and not in the negative tone. One who sees equally all things as his own self, whether in pleasure or in pain, is considered a perfect yogi. Of course, this is Bhagavad Gita, and most of you or all of you would know about this. I don't need to dwell much into it. Whatever be the form anyone worships with faith, I make that faith steady. I mean, just look at the thought that has been shared here. The modern day challenges, the clash of civilizations that we see across the globe for the last 1,000 years or more, the crusades, is the assertion of one form of worship or one form of faith being superior to the other, which also necessarily had the consequences of not accepting the faith, be it by way of being subjected to inquisitions or the dreaded blasphemy laws or decimation of the others. So here I would just try to digress. I mean, the Western and the Indian approach to life as human form is very different. We see the world as Vasudhaika Kutumbakam, where everyone is interdependent, because we also believe in the concept of Advaita, where we are not separated from everything around us. We are an integral, essential part of everything around us. Whereas the worldview from the West has always been in othering. So you would find the narratives, be it from a religious perspective of recognition of us and others. Others need to be cleaned, the others need to be told about the good word, the others need to be decimated or humiliated, or the others need to be converted. So we never had a concept of conversion, because for us it's a way of life in conformity with the law of nature. Whereas this recognition is there in Bhagavad Gita. So therefore he says, whatever be the form anyone worships, whether you worship a idol, you worship a formless one, as long as it is done with faith, I make that faith steady. So that's a philosophical reasoning, as I see, why we survived all these attacks, because we can't really understand why someone has a problem with this statement. That if whatever be the form, I'll accept it. If it is done faithfully, is what the message of Bhagavad Gita is. One who conquers his angers prospers, while those who don't reap adversity as a consequence. I think doesn't need further elaboration at all. An angry person cannot distinguish between what should and should not be said. There is no act or word which an angry person may not do or say. Here, Vanaparva, I would strongly recommend to people who are interested in understanding debates, etc. I mean, Vanaparva is one place where you find the extensive debates between Draupadi on one hand, the kind of intellectual arguments that she presents. I mean, we really should be proud of Draupadi for the arguments she presents in Mahabharata, questioning Yudhishthira. And then when you feel that this argument would not really be able to be overcome, Yudhishthira comes back with a great reasoning, with sense of responsibility and compassion, with forgiveness. So that's what makes Yudhishthira the Dharmaraja as is recognized. And one needs to experience these debates. I would only call it as an experiential thing, because you read from others, you will not understand. But when you go through the journey of these characters and the exchange at the intellectual level that happens there, you would recognize that Yudhishthira, in response to the provocations given by Draupadi, she actually forces him, or he tries to ex him to go to war. He comes back saying an angry person cannot distinguish between what should and should not be said. There is no act or word which an angry person may not do or say. And then we know what anger can do. A person who's always respected, if he's disrespected, then he's as good as dead, though alive. This is a very interesting episode in the Karna Parva. In the midst of the war, Karna had assured Kunti that he would not kill the four brothers except Arjuna. So on one given day, when Karna is in the battle, after Bhishma Pitama has retired, he almost captures Yudhishthira. Arjuna and Sri Krishna are at a different place fighting their battles, and they get to hear that Karna is on the verge of capturing Yudhishthira and decimating him. And as we all know, the fact that Karna has assured Kunti that he will not kill any of the four brothers is not disclosed to anybody else. So Arjuna assumes that Yudhishthira could be decimated. So then Arjuna, in the midst of the war, requests Krishna to take him back, so that he would like to see the body of Yudhishthira to believe that he's alive and he has a reason to fight further. So look at the state of mind of Arjuna there. A brother who loves Yudhishthira as his own father, who put his life at stake for Yudhishthira's birth. He's really anxious. He's lost his sense that he's in the midst of a battle, but he would just want to go and see Yudhishthira is fine or not. And Yudhishthira is spared by Karna, and then he withdraws without getting captured. He manages to escape without getting captured and goes back to his own camp. When he sees Arjuna come there and Krishna come there, Yudhishthira assumes that Arjuna would not withdraw from the war in midst of the Kurukshetra and come back to the camp like he did. So he assumes that Arjuna would have killed Karna and he's come back. So he actually embraces Arjuna and then congratulates him, saying that you finished Karna and then the war is as good as won. Then Arjuna says, sorry, no, I've come back only to see you. That's when Yudhishthira is taken aback and is in rage. He says, what kind of a warrior are you that you leave the war field to come back to see me? And what is the worth of your Gandiva? You kindly throw it off. It's not worth it. And he abuses him. I mean, just look at the humane nature of these characters. See, these are all epitomized as gods and demigods in our public space. But when you actually hear the conversations happening, they are conversations which would happen in any family, where at a spur of a moment we would actually say things to an elder, or an elder would assume things and then curse a younger man without actually going through the realities. And then once the tempers cool down, they go back to normalcy. Here, what happens is that as soon as Yudhishthira curses and abuses Arjuna and says, throw the Gandiva if you can't handle it, Arjuna is under a vow that anyone who would actually humiliate him and ask him to throw the Gandiva, he would kill him. So therefore, he is bound by his understanding of truth, that I'm now supposed to kill Yudhishthira, otherwise I'll be guilty of lying and being untruthful. I will be called untruthful. So therefore, when he's unsheathing his sword, Krishna notices it. What are you doing here? Who's the enemy here to be killed? Then Arjuna discloses his vow that I've taken a vow that anyone who humiliates Gandiva and me would be killed by me. So here he actually pauses, and then Krishna says that what kind of a thinking or understanding of truth do you have? He says truth is not what you assume you're doing. And in any event, he says that there is an alternative. There's always an alternative to the same thing that you've done. So by disrespecting someone elder than you, it's as good as killing him. So the kind of respect and reverence that we are expected in our culture to give to our elders at home and outside is a very ingrained part. And to show disrespect has been recognized to be actually as good as causing their death. Means that's the kind of message that is given on both counts, as to one, that you could actually get over the need to kill Yudhishthira, as also sending the message of the reverence and the stature of a person who's older than you, or a respected person, when he is actually disrespected. It's as good as killing him. I mean, that's the height at which the elders are placed and the respect is placed in our society. Delusion entangles the mind when associated with fools, while the association with the wise and the good leads one on the path of dharma. Now, this happens when, after the game of dice, Pandavas are required to leave Hastinapura with bare clothes as hermits and go out. The citizen of Hastinapura choose to follow them, and they actually go out of Hastinapura to stay with Pandavas. When Yudhishthira tries to dissuade them from following Pandavas into the forest by saying that it will be very difficult and I will not be able to provide for your necessities and as a duty bound, and that will cause me more grief. The citizen of Hastinapura talk about the importance of the company that we keep. Delusion entangles the mind when associated with fools. That is, they are referring to the Kauravas. While the association with the wise and the good leads one on the path of dharma. So they choose to be in the company of Yudhishthira and on the path of dharma. So that was the importance a normal common citizen also had for dharma. Jealousy makes a person unhappy and is also fatal. So this, I think, is in the Sabhava Parva, where after coming back from the Rajasuya Yajna in Indraprastha, the Kaurava prince Duryodhana, he's full of jealousy and angst. He goes to his father and puts across the proposal of his uncle Shakuni that let's call them for a game of dice, and then he can actually defeat them and win over the entire kingdom without bloodshed. So Dhritarashtra is a dharma-knowing person. On the first instance, he always actually responds and reacts through his perception of dharma, and then says, jealousy makes a person unhappy and is also fatal. And this becomes providentially a prophecy where all his sons die because he gives in to adharma. Forgiveness is dharma. Forgiveness is sacrifice. Forgiveness is the quintessence of Vedas. Forgiveness is the essence of Shruti. He who knows this is capable of forgiving everything. Forgiveness is being spoken to in the same context in Vanaparva, where Draupadi, Arjuna, Bhima, Nakula, Sahadeva are egging Yudhishthira to go to war. And he says that no, we should forgive them for their flaws. One wonders what is the justification or what is the reason for Yudhishthira to actually forgive that kind of humiliation and then suffering that they put Draupadi too, and all of them having to go through the forest life for 12 years and then exile for 1 year. That has a backstory there. Immediately after the Rajasuya Yajna, Vedavyasa comes, and then Yudhishthira inquires with him as to what are the portents of performing of a yajna of this scale. He says that whether you like it or not, at a matter of 13 years from now, the entire Kuru dynasty will be decimated, and you will be the cause of the decimation, and you will remain victor after that decimation of the entire Kshatriya race. That is when Yudhishthira takes a vow. More often than not, people don't speak about this backstory, which warrants Yudhishthira to accept the invitation to the game of dice, because he knows by displeasing or rejecting the invitation sent by Dhritarashtra to come for a game of dice, he would give them a cause to be unhappy. He did not want to give them a cause to be unhappy, and therefore he accepts that invite and goes there. After the first round of game of gamble, after Draupadi is disrobed and then humiliated, Gandhari intervenes, and then the properties are all, kingdoms are restored and their freedom is restored. Then they are on their way back. Again, emissary is sent, and then Dhritarashtra invites them back the second time. The brothers and the mother question, we just got humiliated and we've come back. Why do you accept this invitation again? Yudhishthira, again to avoid decimation of his clan, accepts it because he feels whatever it is, I don't mind, but I don't want the Kuru dynasty to be decimated. He tries his best to avoid it, but unfortunately it was not to be. No person should ever belittle himself, for the person who belittles himself never obtains prosperity. See, look at the tenor of this statement from Draupadi. So she's also trying to provoke Yudhishthira to make him react, saying that you are undermining your capacity. You actually are undermining yourself, and that is actually belittling yourself and your brothers. And the person who belittles himself never obtains prosperity. This is again asking him to go to war instead of suffering 12 years of life in forest and exile. Everything is not known to everyone. There is no one who is versed in all subjects. Knowledge in all subjects is not found in any one person. I mean, except there's one exception that is universal. Your spouse knows everything better than you. Character is primary for a person. Having wealth and friends is meaningless for one devoid of character. So the importance of character is mentioned here in the Viduraniti. This is again post 13 years, that when the Pandavas are back and they're about to claim their own rights, that Vidura speaks to Dhritarashtra. And here he says, character is primary for a person. Having wealth and friends is meaningless for one devoid of character, because your friends or wealth are all transient. Sorrow diminishes beauty. I mean, this, now look at this mental health issues that we've been talking about contemporarily. Sorrow diminishes beauty. Sorrow diminishes strength. Sorrow diminishes understanding. Sorrow brings disease. And I think we would all seen it around. The mental health challenges that people have lead to physical ailments. Physical ailments are actually a consequence of your mental health issues. And they have been addressed and spoken to in Mahabharata at length in multiple places. I do not renounce life because it is a very sinful act. We're talking about suicide here. And not lest indeed, I may have a more miserable life in the next birth. We have a concept of rebirth. So it is in this context that one needs to understand why this statement is being made. So here it is not Bhishma who's talking about committing suicide. It is Bhishma who's talking about the concept of suicide, and a person who's seeking to renounce his life voluntarily because of certain challenges in life or certain state of despondency as a consequence of mental health or depression or financial constraints or whatever it is. So it is in this context that he's speaking about, because that is considered a Mahapataka, Atmahatya. So he's actually highlighting that consequences of committing such thing, both to dissuade a person on one hand by saying your effort can change your destiny. At the same time, they're also showing the consequences that what is the guarantee? But this is going to solve problems. This could only aggravate the problems for your loved ones or probably even after life. What is the guarantee you'll have a better life? It could be even worse. That's the manner in which they're dealing with this issue in a very sensitive and subtle. Contentment does not come from acquisition of objects of desire. The thirst for acquisition of material things increases with each new acquisition, as adding fuel to fire only increases the fire. Here, I think, it's not part of the book though, but I would recommend everyone to read the story of Yayati. That's the best ever found example for me to epitomize this maxim. Contentment does not come from acquisition of objects of desire. The thirst for acquisition of material things increases with each new acquisition, as adding fuel to fire only increases the fire. The story of Yayati is where this man, who's a king, his carnal desires are not fulfilled. And then he's cursed by his father in law for having taken his daughter's maid as a consort and having a child through him. So when he's cursed with old age and decrepitude, he goes and asks his wife's, the children through his wife, if they're willing to exchange it for his youth and then take the kingdom after he's satiated himself. They refuse. The consort's son very happily takes up the old age and decrepitude, which has been infested on Yayati. And then he comes out after enjoying the youth in the company of young women for about 1,000 years. Suddenly, the moment of realization, as probably Buddha had the Bodhisattva moment, Yayati suddenly realizes that my young son is suffering the pangs of old age and decrepitude, whereas my desires, my carnal desires, howsoever they are, I'm trying to address them or fulfill them, are not getting satiated and they keep increasing by the day. So it talks about the importance of detaching yourself. Here I think we need to read it in the context of the four stages of life: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa. So we have a very simple formula as to how to gradually, gracefully grow in life. Yayati chose to remain in grihastha eternally, even at the cost of sending his son into a state of old age while he was still very young. So that desires can never be satiated, your carnal or material desires. And that is why probably the monks who own Ferraris eventually turn to be monks and sell their Ferraris. Pleasant words bring about good, while spiteful words bring about unpleasant consequences. This, I think, is self-explanatory, and we all would have used these words one way or the other on multiple occasions with our own parents, with our children, our spouses, friends at work. And then the very same communication or expression, the tone and the manner and the choice of words makes the world of difference. Silence, it is said, is better than speech. If one must speak, then speak the truth. If truth is to be spoken, it is better to speak what is agreeable. And if what is agreeable is to be said, then it is better to say what is consistent with dharma. So this power of words is also moderated. So silence is gold, as we all are familiar with. Silence, it is said, is better than speech. If one must speak, then speak the truth. If truth is to be spoken, it is better to speak what is agreeable. Agreeable here would mean something which is in a less harsh expression, or probably if you have to give a very negative or a sad news, also make it the minimalistic way so that the person would be able to absorb it. And if what is agreeable is to be said, then it is better to say what is consistent with dharma. So probably this is what probably the recent exchange of an interview where the foreign minister Jaishankar and a news anchor, he actually mentioned this. He said, this is the minimum that I can use, that it is the epicenter. So therefore, he speaks about the importance of the language, the choice of words, and he says that this is the minimum word I can use, epicenter of terrorism. And he actually plays it up beautifully and then he actually demonstrates how it could be done. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation. I really am grateful for a wonderful audience to hear me out.
Yeah, anyone has questions? Yeah, I don't see any questions.
This is
Okay, go ahead, please.
sorry. Yeah, question on one of the what do I say? One of the poems in the about karma, how karma drives one's I think one's destiny or one's results, something of that sort. Um, so based on that, can we say that Mahabharata or the people in it do not believe in fate, that whatever is written, that's what you will get, um, and instead we are, Mahabharata actually is saying you are responsible for your actions and you will get the results based on your actions.
Right. Absolutely. What actually it means is, the karma concept needs to be understood. I mean, I'm quite a very elementary level learner in this concept, but my understanding of karma is very simplistic, which is that we are born with a certain aspect which is referred to as the prarabdha. So prarabdha is where we are born, and with certain events which are or certain things that are meant to happen in our lifetimes. My understanding of prarabdha is like your tax rate. And this is my interpretation, and I'm subject to correction, and it's a simplistic expression. So if it is like if a person, probably because of his past conduct and has been allocated prarabdha for the present life, let's say 20% or 10% or 50%, depends on his luck. So, and then your effort that the Mahabharata is talking about, or the present time, that what we can do to actually change our future or our destiny is the effort that we are talking about. So you're born with certain percentile, and your effort into that percentile is what you actually reap. So if your effort is probably 100 rupees, then your prarabdha is 10, you will make it 110. But if your effort is 1 rupee or $1, and still the 10% prarabdha remains with you, so it will make it probably 1.1. So that's my simplistic understanding for to see how it actually plays out. I mean, it's a very complex subject, but I've tried to simplify so that I could relate to it on a day-to-day basis. And this is the best way I could understand with GST getting introduced recently. When I was getting into this space in 2017-18, I found this is the simplest way of understanding karma, that karma is your percentage of tax. It's good or bad, or deduction or a bonus or whatever it is. It's a fixed percentage. You're born with it. You can't change that. But that's because that's your prarabdha. And what you do in your present life is your the present karma, which could also result in good and bad. And Bhagavad Gita talks about doing it with dispassionately. So whatever you do, then it has no consequence. It will not accumulate karma. Then eventually, when you stop accumulating karma, you will have the end goal of dharmartha kama leading to moksha.
Thank you very much, sir.
Any more questions?
Good evening, Sridhar ji.
Good evening, sir.
This side Satyendra here. First,
Yes,
I would like to compliment you that you have filled up a very long needed void for maxing from Indian scriptures, and you have collected them in a form of a book. It's a very noble work that you have done. As we know that our scriptures abound in these maxims, there are millions and millions of them, but you have done a great work by compiling them. And I just a small wish that I have, that if some digital content is created using these maxims, this can be a good way of sending good morning messages, which have been dominated by Christian-based themes or Quran-based themes in our daily routine life when you get messages forwarded to us. So somebody, I think, just a wish from my side, somebody should work on them and make it digital content that we can use them as good morning messages. It's a good way of spreading the message of great messages from Mahabharata. That's all from my side. Thank you once again, sir.
I really appreciate your suggestion, sir. I mean, I would recommend that you can just pick this book is available on Kindle and Amazon. Take a screenshot and share it every day to the people you would love to share it with. And it'll automatically spread each day because the structure of the book is I give the context to begin with, then the Devanagari sloka in its original. Then I've given an English transliteration for those who cannot read Devanagari. And then my understanding in as a Bhavartha in English. And with the source, where if you would like to check the source, it's all referred from Suktankar Sanskrit Mahabharata, which is available online. So, I mean, if anybody wants to check, in fact, I had the privilege of running it through a few scholars who have endorsed this work, sir. So I think you can just take a picture and share it, sir. That's the simplest thing. And anyone who wants to do it would be more than welcome because I don't have any copyright on Mahabharata, nor I do intend to stop anyone from sharing it because the idea behind the book is to make us realize that we've been kept away from our itihasas for a very oblique reason. The oblique reason being that once your source of knowledge and wisdom is cut, you're struggling for that, and that's when somebody is actually supplying their content, which believes that their way and no other way can exist. That's the unfortunate reality of the times that we live in. And we are a way of life. We would accept their ways as well as ours and choose the one we would be more comfortable with. So please go ahead, sir, and do it. I'll be happy to share it.
And any more questions? We have like 2 more minutes.
This is Amar again. Can I ask one more question?
Please go.
This is about the maxim on suicide. And I think Bhishma, it sounded like he was saying, suicide is not a good thing to do. But throughout Mahabharata, we keep hearing the Prayopavesha as a self-punishment, or as, when they lost the battle, or if I lose that battle, I will commit Prayopavesha. So what's your thought there? Is it acceptable in some circumstances, not for some, or acceptable maybe for Kshatriyas, not for others? What's the nuance there?
For us, sir, the Varna Ashrama is more an occupational based thing. Like today, we have IT, doctors, engineers, lawyers. It was a traditional society which had occupational professions, depending on their vasanas or their inclinations. So it was a society in that context. So we can't confine it to Kshatriyas or otherwise, the first thing. The second thing is the question of suicide is in the context of a depressed state of mind. In fact, in the book at page 88, 89, this particular issue I've dealt with. This is in the context of a poor man who's knocked out on the road, who's very fatally injured. He's poor. There he actually thinks of giving up his life because it's like there's no value for a poor man's life in this world. It is in this context that he says this. So, and he thinks of giving it up. And there, a jackal comes to him. I mean, again, an anecdote. I put it in the words of Bhishma in the sloka. The jackal comes and says that what is the guarantee what life you will have? See, look at my life. And then tries to put sense into his head. See, a person who's in that state of mind would only need some kind of a rational opening to his darkness. A speck of light is all that they need at that moment to see some rationality. And then automatically we are pro-life, primarily in every sense of that expression, pro-life. And at the same time, I'm not using it in the American political context of pro-life here, that the protection of your life is the paramo dharma. So it's the highest order of dharma that one has to perform, that to save his own life. This conversations you will also come when in the first instance after the Lakshagraha episode, all of them go and then Bhima kills Bakasura. The family conversation between their landlord, landlady, the two young children who talk about giving up their lives. It is also in that context of sacrifice there. So again, when you talk about committing a suicide or waging their life, waging a life was a known form of wager that you would give up. So a wager of life could also mean probably you cut your hair, or it's not head itself. So there were various means. Like Sri Krishna said that talking disrespectfully is also causing death. So, I mean, there are various forms. The life per se is not the only breath that we talk about. It is also about various other aspects that are recognized. And of course, to save oneself in case of a greater harm, or in the sense of being captivated or captured, etc., is one frame of mind in which probably you are referring or framing your question, I believe. That is a different context. That's not in the context of a mental health challenge or a depressed person taking this call to or not to kill himself.
Thank you very much. It's a beautiful story, that Jackal one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for doing this.
Yeah, I think we are over time now. So on behalf of the whole Indic Forum family, just want to thank Sridharji for this wonderful talk. Hopefully you'll get to organize more events down the line. And for everyone who has attended, like the next event is coming up on February 11 about geography in Ramayana. So please make sure that you are subscribed to our WhatsApp groups, email lists, and we have a website, indicforum.org. Bookmark it. Please share the link of this YouTube video with your friends and family so that word gets spread. And hope to see all of you again in Feb.